I built devices that changed industries, but I couldn't fix what was breaking at home. When I saw Emily with someone else at 3 a.m., it felt like my entire world, everything I fought for, collapsed in a single moment. Nathan Carter's life at 35 was what many would describe as a dream come true. He had fought for his country, and now, as an inventor, he was changing the world. His latest tech invention had gained significant attention, landing him contracts with major companies and earning him the respect of peers in the industry. But behind the scenes, Nathan's personal life was equally important. He shared this success with Emily, his wife of 9 years. Emily, 33, was a marketing executive who could charm anyone in a room. She was sharp, savvy, and as beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside. Nathan often joked that she was the real reason behind his success, her ability to sell anything, including him when he needed it most. They met years ago, shortly after Nathan's return from his service in the Army. Their connection was instant, a spark that turned into an unshakable bond. They shared the same ambitions, the same values, and the same vision for the future. Together, they built their lives from the ground up. A perfect home in a quiet neighborhood, 2 dogs, vacations in exotic locations. Everyone thought they were the epitome of success. On the outside, they were untouchable. But Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Over time, he had started to notice subtle changes in Emily's behavior. Her laughter had become less frequent, and their conversations, once filled with dreams and excitement, now felt obligatory. But he was too consumed with his work to really acknowledge it. After all, they had been through so much together. Surely their foundation was strong enough to weather any storm. Nathan and Emily's love story was one for the books, one that had grown from shared hardships and triumphs. When Nathan enlisted in the Army at 18, he never imagined he'd meet the love of his life so early. During his deployment, Emily's letters became his lifeline, her words of encouragement keeping him going through the most difficult times. When he returned home, they didn't waste any time. They got married quickly, a simple ceremony that felt like the beginning of everything. After the Army, Nathan dove headfirst into school, earning a degree in electrical engineering. Emily was there every step of the way, working long hours to support him while he focused on his studies. She believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. She'd remind him, "You're going to change the world, Nathan. Just wait and see." And slowly, over the years, he began to see it too. Their relationship was built on sacrifice. Nathan spent nights studying, weekends buried in blueprints, and Emily, ever the supportive partner, gave him the space he needed to grow. In return, Nathan promised her they would one day have everything they dreamed of: success, love, and a future full of possibilities. They made it through the toughest moments: money struggles, career doubts, the emotional toll of his military service. They had always been a team. But as Nathan's career began to take off, he started to notice the toll it was taking on Emily. She had always been his rock, his constant, but lately she seemed distant. He would catch her staring out the window, lost in thought, or hear her sigh during quiet dinners. He chalked it up to the pressures of her job and life in general. But deep down, he wondered if the unspoken distance between them was something more. Still, he couldn't afford to focus on it. There were bigger things at play now: his inventions, his career, their future. Surely everything would be fine, right? The first sign that something was wrong came slowly, almost imperceptibly. Nathan had always been focused on his work, often burying himself in new projects and innovations. He loved the thrill of creating, of bringing something new into the world. But as his career began to take off, he started noticing Emily pulling away. It started with small things. Emily working late more often, attending extra meetings with clients, and spending less time at home. When she was there, she was present in body, but not in spirit. Her eyes would glaze over during conversations, and when Nathan asked her how her day had gone, she would give a vague answer and change the subject. Nathan thought it was just stress, the kind that came with her demanding job in marketing. Maybe she needed more space. Maybe she was just tired. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. At times, Emily seemed agitated for no reason. She would snap at him over trivial things: a misplaced book on the counter, the coffee brewing too late in the morning. It was as if everything he did was wrong. Nathan would try to calm things down, but she often brushed him off, claiming she was just stressed or overwhelmed. He would let it slide after all. They had been through so much together, hadn't they? There had to be a reasonable explanation. But deep inside, Nathan couldn't shake the growing sense that something was changing between them. One night, after a particularly tense dinner, Nathan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was imagining things. Maybe he was just paranoid. Maybe he wasn't as emotionally available as he should have been. But the feeling in his gut wouldn't go away. He just had this gut-wrenching sense that something was off. It was a cold Friday night when Nathan's world came crashing down. He had just wrapped up an exhausting week of meetings and had planned to spend the evening with Emily. She had mentioned a client dinner, so Nathan assumed she would be home late, but when the clock struck midnight and she still hadn't returned, a knot formed in his stomach. He waited for another hour, pacing the living room, each tick of the clock echoing louder than the last. By 2:30 a.m., his anxiety had turned into outright dread. He grabbed his phone, dialing Emily's number. Straight to voicemail. His heart raced. There was something wrong. In a moment of panic, he opened the tracking app on her phone. It was something they had both agreed to install for safety, especially when they were in different places. Nathan knew the app wasn't meant to be used like this, but something told him he had to check. When he saw her location at a bar across town, his breath hitched in his chest. Nathan tried to shake off the sinking feeling. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was just working late and had met a client for drinks. But when he saw the name of the bar, a place she'd never mentioned before, his instincts screamed that something was wrong. He couldn't just sit here and wait. He had to see for himself. The drive to the bar felt like it took an eternity. Every red light felt like it lasted too long, and every passing second felt like it was eating away at him. When Nathan arrived and walked through the doors of the bar, he wasn't prepared for what he saw. There, across the room, sat Emily laughing, her hand resting on the arm of another man. Nathan froze. He knew this man, had heard Emily mention him a few times, but there was something more now. The closeness between them, Emily's body leaning in just a little too much. The way they exchanged private smiles made Nathan's stomach drop. For a moment, Nathan couldn't breathe. He wanted to confront her, storm over and demand answers, but he was paralyzed. Was this really happening? Was this really his wife, the woman he trusted more than anyone in the world? And why had she lied about where she was? The sight of them together felt like a betrayal so deep that Nathan couldn't find the words to express the crushing pain that flooded his chest. His world, everything he had worked so hard to build, felt like it was shattering in front of him. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest as he walked toward Emily and the man she was with. The space between him and them seemed to stretch out in slow motion, each step heavy with dread. As he got closer, the reality of the situation hit him like a tidal wave. His wife, his Emily, was sitting there, so casual, so comfortable with another man. The man's hand lingered on her arm, and she didn't seem to mind. The laughter between them was warm, intimate, and Nathan was frozen in the doorway for a moment, trying to process what he was seeing. But then, the anger and confusion broke through. He couldn't just stand there anymore. He walked up to their table, his voice steady but strained as he spoke Emily's name. Emily. The man, startled by Nathan's sudden presence, quickly stood up, awkwardly excusing himself. Nathan didn't even acknowledge him. His eyes were locked on Emily. She looked up, her expression faltering for just a split second, but she quickly tried to mask her surprise. "Why are you here?" Emily asked, her voice shaky. Nathan could barely form words. His mind raced. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but instead he managed to ask, "What's going on, Emily? What is this?" Emily hesitated, then tried to laugh it off. "It's not what you think, Nathan. He's just a friend, we were talking." But Nathan couldn't hear her excuses anymore. The image of them together, the way she had looked at him, the way they had seemed to fit so well, hit him like a brick. A friend, Nathan's voice was cold now, cutting through the warm air of the bar. "At 3 a.m.? You didn't even tell me you were coming here. Where was the truth in that?" The tears began to well up in Emily's eyes, but Nathan was no longer concerned with her feelings. He was drowning in his own pain, his own disbelief. "I don't know what to say to you right now," he continued, shaking his head. "You've been lying to me. I've been with you all this time, and this is how you repay me." Emily tried to reach for his arm, but he pulled away, his anger and hurt too strong. "Don't touch me. Just explain yourself. Tell me how this happened." Emily's voice cracked as she finally admitted, "Nathan, I didn't mean for this to happen. I felt alone. You've been so focused on your work and I just got caught up in it. I didn't think it would go this far. But it has, and I'm sorry, okay? I'm so sorry." But Nathan couldn't listen to her apologies. The damage was already done. The image of her with someone else, the laughter, the closeness was burned into his mind. Nothing she could say would fix this. The following days were a blur of emotions: anger, confusion, deep, aching pain. Nathan couldn't focus on work. Every time he tried to get back into the flow of things, his mind would return to that moment in the bar. Emily's face, the touch of her hand on another man, and the hollow words of her apology echoed through his thoughts. He couldn't escape it. When he returned home, the house felt cold, unfamiliar. The place that had once been a symbol of their shared life together now felt like a prison. He avoided Emily for days, refusing to speak to her. She would try to approach him, but he could only give her cold, silent responses. The worst part was not the betrayal itself, it was the sense of complete and utter disillusionment. Nathan had given everything to this marriage. He had trusted Emily with his heart, his hopes, and his future. And now, she had shattered all of that. How could he ever look at her the same way again? How could he go back to a life where the person he loved most had so easily turned her back on him? Nathan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions, all spiraling into chaos. He wanted to scream at her, to shake her and demand answers, but no amount of yelling would take away the betrayal. No amount of blaming would fix the empty hole in his chest. On the 5th day after the confrontation, Emily finally sat down with Nathan, hoping for a chance to talk. She begged him for forgiveness, for a chance to explain. But Nathan couldn't listen to her anymore. He had heard it all before: the apologies, the promises of change, the tears. He was tired of being disappointed. "I need time," Nathan told her, his voice low but firm. "I can't just forget this. I don't know if I ever will. I need space. I need to figure out what I want." Emily tried to protest, but Nathan's words cut through her attempts. "I can't be here right now. I need to be alone, Emily," and with that, he left. Nathan's time away from Emily was a whirlwind of confusion and soul-searching. He couldn't escape the deep ache in his chest, but he also knew that the only way forward was to face this head-on. Every moment he spent alone brought him closer to the truth. He had to figure out who he was without Emily. He had given so much of himself to their marriage, to his work, and to the life they built together. But now, standing on the edge of this painful realization, Nathan realized that he had been losing himself for years. He sought solace in his inventions, spending long nights in his workshop, testing new ideas, and pouring his mind into his work. For the first time in years, the quiet hum of his tools was the only thing that calmed him. It was a strange feeling. Work had always been a place of escape for him, but now it was his lifeline. Yet even the work didn't fully fill the void. He reached out to his closest friends, trying to gain perspective. One evening, he met with James, an old army buddy who had been a steady presence in his life. Over beers, Nathan tried to articulate the mess swirling in his mind. "I don't know who I am anymore, man," he admitted. "I've spent so much time being her husband, being the inventor, being the guy who can always fix everything. But now, what do I fix? Who am I when everything falls apart?" James listened, nodding quietly, before responding with words that would stay with Nathan. "You've spent so much time focusing on everyone else, Nathan. Maybe now it's time to focus on yourself. You can't keep looking for answers in her. You have to find the answer within yourself." It was a harsh truth, but Nathan knew he had to face it. He needed to reclaim the parts of himself he had lost in the years of being a husband, an inventor, and a provider. He wasn't just the man who had been betrayed. He was Nathan Carter, the man who had dreams, hopes, and a future still waiting to unfold. But the road to reclaiming that would be anything but easy. Nathan's time away had allowed him the space he needed, but now it was time to make a choice. Emily had been begging him for a chance to rebuild their relationship, to move past the betrayal and start fresh. She promised him that she would do anything to regain his trust. And yet, every time she spoke those words, Nathan's heart would grow heavy. Could he ever trust her again? Could he ever look at her without seeing the betrayal? The truth was, Nathan wasn't sure anymore. He had spent so much time imagining a future with Emily, imagining their growing family, the career they would build together, and the life they would share. But now that dream felt distant, like a shadow of what could have been. Emily tried everything she could think of. She called him, sent messages, and even left handwritten letters begging for forgiveness. But Nathan had reached a breaking point. He had spent days replaying that night at the bar in his mind. The lie she had told him, the way she had seemed so comfortable with another man, it kept playing over and over like a broken record. One afternoon, Emily came to his workshop, her face pale, her eyes filled with tears. She stood in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee, as though it was something they shared together, a simple gesture to remind him of what they had. "I know I've hurt you, Nathan," Emily said, her voice trembling. "But I swear to you, it was a mistake. I love you. I want to fix this. I want to rebuild our life. Please, don't give up on us." Nathan looked at her, the woman he had loved for so long, and for the first time he felt no warmth in his heart, only the cold reality of what had happened. He loved her, but trust was fragile, and once it was broken, it was nearly impossible to rebuild. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," Emily, Nathan finally said, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't know if I can look at you the same way again. The damage is done. I can't pretend everything is okay." Emily's face crumpled, and tears spilled down her cheeks as she stepped forward, reaching for his hand. "Please, don't leave me," she whispered, the desperation in her voice unmistakable. But Nathan pulled his hand away, the decision clear in his mind. "I can't stay in a relationship based on lies, Emily. I need to find myself again, and I can't do that if I'm still trapped in the past. I think we need to let go." The silence between them was suffocating. Nathan had made his decision. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't without pain, but he knew it was the right choice for him. He needed to heal. He needed to move forward. As he left the house later that evening, a strange sense of freedom washed over him. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter that would be his, and his alone. In the weeks that followed his decision, Nathan found solace in his own company. It was an odd feeling, both freeing and suffocating, but he knew it was the only way to truly begin healing. He had spent so many years trying to make everything work for everyone else, always putting his dreams on the back burner in favor of his wife, his career, and the life they had built together. Now, with Emily gone and the weight of betrayal hanging over him, Nathan was forced to face the parts of himself he had neglected. For the first time in years, he woke up without a plan, without an obligation to anyone. He began spending his mornings at a small local cafe, sketching out new invention ideas or simply reading a book, something he hadn't done in years. He could breathe. The constant pressure of being everything to everyone had finally lifted. But the silence of his apartment was both a blessing and a curse. Nathan would go days without speaking to anyone but the barista at the cafe or a colleague at work. His thoughts, once clouded with confusion, were now sharp, painful, but necessary. He spent hours reflecting on his marriage to Emily. He had loved her so deeply, but somewhere along the way he had lost himself. He had become too focused on keeping up appearances, on the career that had consumed him, and on trying to make everything perfect. He realized now that in doing so, he had neglected the small things, the moments of connection, the conversations that mattered, the care that should have been given to their relationship. Through this time of solitude, Nathan began to reconnect with his true self. He found joy in small, everyday moments, rediscovered his love for his craft, and started taking risks in his work that he had once been afraid to take. He began to trust himself again. The pain of the betrayal still lingered, but Nathan was no longer defined by it. He was learning to move beyond it. The day Nathan finally felt ready to move on came unexpectedly. He had spent months focusing on his own growth, and though the scars from the past still remained, they no longer held him captive. One evening, while working late in his workshop, Nathan received a call from his old college professor, Dr. Williams. The professor had always believed in Nathan's potential and had heard about his recent breakthroughs in technology. They spoke about a potential collaboration on a new project venture that would allow Nathan to finally step into the spotlight, not as a husband or an inventor defined by his past, but as a man carving out his own legacy. The excitement he felt as they discussed the project wasn't just about the invention. It was about something bigger. It was the realization that he had the ability to shape his future, to take charge of his life in a way he never had before. He didn't need Emily or anyone else to tell him what he was capable of. He had proven it to himself. As the days passed, Nathan began to take small steps toward letting go of the past. He visited his parents, reconnected with friends he hadn't spoken to in years, and started putting more energy into his work. He wasn't trying to replace what he had lost, but rather to build something new, a life that was authentically his. One afternoon, Nathan ran into Emily by chance. She looked different, her face softer, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and understanding. She was no longer the woman he had been so angry with. And though the wound she had left would never fully heal, Nathan knew that he had grown beyond it. They spoke briefly, and Emily apologized again for everything, but Nathan simply nodded. He didn't need her forgiveness, and he no longer carried the weight of her actions with him. "Take care of yourself, Emily," he said, his voice steady. "I hope you find your way." And with that, he walked away, his heart lighter than it had been in months. He had finally taken back control of his life. And there you have it, Nathan's journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately healing. A story about loss, but also about rediscovery, personal growth, and the strength it takes to move forward. If you've ever felt like you're stuck in a relationship, or a life that isn't truly yours, Nathan's story is a reminder that it's never too late to find yourself again. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share it with anyone who might relate to Nathan's story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about love, life, and the lessons we all learn along the way. Thanks again for watching.